My name is Emily Carter, and if you had looked at me that night, you would have thought I was living a perfect life. I stood on the rooftop ballroom of a luxury hotel in Chicago, the skyline glittering like a crown around us, the lake shimmering beneath the evening sky, a jazz quartet playing soft, elegant notes behind a towering champagne fountain. The guests wore silk gowns and tailored tuxedos diamonds, catching candlelight laughter floating through the air like perfume. It was the kind of wedding people in glossy magazines dream about, the kind of event where everything looks beautiful even when something rotten is hiding underneath. I stood there in a navy silk dress, 33 years old, hair pinned neatly, makeup soft and polished. On the outside, I looked calm, composed, fortunate. Inside, I felt like a ghost haunting a life that did not want me. This day was not mine. It never was. It belonged to my younger brother Daniel, 28, the chosen one, the golden son who could do no wrong. He stood under cascading orchids, smiling for cameras, accepting congratulations from family, friends, and business associates as if he were royalty. Our parents beamed with pride, gliding through the crowd like monarchs accepting tribute. And me, I was the accessory, the afterthought, the daughter who had built her own life only to be reminded that it was never truly hers. I raised my flute of champagne but did not drink. I had learned long ago never to dull my instincts around my family. It was dangerous to not be fully alert. Every smile from my mother felt strained when directed at me. Every proud glance from my father skipped right over my face as if I were a shadow in their perfect picture. I told myself I could get through one night of being invisible. I had done it for decades. I could do it again. But sometimes the moment you think you can endure just one more thing is the moment life decides to break you open. My father tapped his glass. The quartet fell silent. 200 guests turned toward him. He smiled proudly, face flushed with satisfaction and expensive whiskey. Family means everything, he announced. Tonight is not just a celebration of marriage, but of the unity and sacrifice that holds families together. I felt my stomach go cold. His voice swelled with importance as he continued. And no one embodies sacrifice like my daughter Emily. A murmur of admiration rippled through the room. I froze. I felt something inside me tighten, a warning deep in my bones, and as a symbol of our values of commitment to each other. Emily has decided to gift Daniel and his lovely bride a penthouse as their wedding gift. Applause exploded, hands clapped, people gasped with delight. A woman near me said, "Oh my goodness, what a sister," with genuine awe. Someone else whispered, "It must be millions. How generous." My breath disappeared. I felt the world tilt as if the marble floor had shifted beneath my heels. My father continued to smile like a benevolent king bestowing blessings on his kingdom. He said it like it was truth, like it was already decided. But I had never agreed to this. That penthouse was my future, my independence, my reward for nights of grinding alone, of building my life brick by brick without a single ounce of help from this family that loved only the image of itself. I set my glass down. Then I stood, heart pounding but voice steady, cutting through applause like a blade. That is not true. I never agreed to give Daniel anything. Silence hit the room like a slap. Heads turned, eyebrows lifted, faces stiffened. My mother's painted smile faltered, freezing into something brittle and cold. Someone near the front muttered, "Selfish." Another whispered, "Poor parents." My father's jaw clenched. He stepped toward me, shoulders squared. He did not yell. He did not even raise his voice. That would have been too honest. Instead, he smiled tightly and reached for my arm, gripping it so hard my bones ached beneath his fingers. His nails dug into my skin. His breath was warm on my cheek. His voice came out low, quiet enough for only me to hear, but sharp as a blade. "You owe us for the life we gave you." The words landed like an old wound being torn open. For years, I had heard it in different forms. You owe us your obedience. You owe us your gratitude. You owe us your life. But something in me snapped. I met his eyes and whispered back, "I owe you nothing." The rage that flickered through his eyes was almost beautiful in its clarity. Then he shoved me. There was no hesitation, no moment of doubt. His hand drove forward with the confidence of someone who believed their right to control me was absolute. My heel caught the leg of a chair and my body lurched backward. The sharp corner of a banquet table met my skull with a sickening crack. Pain exploded across my head. Glass shattered. Someone screamed. My vision blurred and the ceiling lights smeared into white streaks. I could hear gasps and murmurs, the frantic whispering of scandal dressed as concern. A phone lifted somewhere nearby, its camera steady recording the red light, glowing like an accusation. My mother rushed toward me, crouching beside my crumpled body. Her face twisted into a mask of panic, but her voice slithered into my ear with venom. "Look what you made him do!" I tasted iron. The world tilted. People crowded, but no one touched me. And then everything moved at once. Sirens wailed. My body was strapped to a stretcher. Cold night air hit my skin. Lights flashed across my vision. A paramedic held my wrist, counting my pulse. "Stay with us, Emily. Stay with me." The ambulance rattled. Oxygen filled my lungs through a mask. My head throbbed with each bump in the road. The ER lights felt cruelly bright. A nurse pressed gauze to my head, voice firm but gentle. "Did someone hurt you?" My lips trembled. "Yes. My father hurt me. My mother blamed me. My family broke me long before tonight. But years of conditioning wrapped around my throat like a chain. Years of being told that speaking truth would destroy us. Years of believing that silence was protection." I swallowed. I whispered, "I am fine." It was a lie. The last lie I would ever tell for them. Because I knew it now. This was not the night I lost my family. It was the night I finally understood I never truly had one. I belonged to myself. And the price of their control had finally come due. I grew up believing that love was something you earned and that worth was something given only if you behaved the right way. In the Carter household, affection was conditional and hierarchy was absolute. My father, Richard Carter, ruled our home the way a general commands a battalion, with authority that was unquestionable and pride that outweighed reason. My mother, Catherine, was his loyal lieutenant, reinforcing his expectations with a sweet voice and a steel spine. And then there was Daniel, the heir to everything that mattered in their eyes, the boy who entered the world already crowned. And me, I was the reminder that daughters were burdens until proven useful. The Carter house was large, impressively manicured, and always spotless. You could eat off the marble floors, but you would never find warmth there. It was not a home, it was an institution. Our dinner table was long and polished with silverware that gleamed under chandelier light. My father sat at the head, my mother at his right, Daniel beside her, and I at the far end, as though distance could reinforce my place in the family order. Daniel's stories always came first. When he spoke about school or sports or whatever hobby he had cycled into that week, my parents leaned forward, their eyes shining. My mother giggled like a girl in love with her own son, and my father nodded as if Daniel were a young king learning to rule. When I spoke, the light dimmed. My father would sometimes sigh, checking his watch, and my mother would offer a polite nod, a thin smile, and a sentence that almost always began with "but." "But do not be so serious, Emily. But you should not speak so confidently. But boys do not like girls who sound so sure of themselves." My achievements were tidy, neat, and tucked away like linen folded in a cabinet. Daniel's were framed on walls. Even when those achievements were more aspiration than result, he still received applause. I, on the other hand, learned young that being right did not matter nearly as much as being agreeable. When I came home with straight A's, my father shrugged and said that girls are naturally studious. When Daniel came home with a C, my parents hugged him and said, "Boys learn differently. Just do your best, sweetheart." The double standard was not subtle, but it was always wrapped in the false politeness of tradition. "Girls do not need ambition," my mother often told me while brushing my hair as if the strokes of the brush were smoothing rebellion out of me. "A daughter's role is to support. A good woman does not outshine the men in her family." She smiled as she said it, but there was no kindness behind her eyes. Daniel, meanwhile, was told he would build the Carter legacy. He would take over the business. He would carry the family name. He would have children who would inherit the world the way he had inherited entitlement. I can still hear my father's voice echoing through our halls, firm and matter of fact. A man builds, a woman supports. That is how strong families survive. Sometimes I think he believed he was teaching me wisdom. He was really teaching me to disappear. When I was 9 years old, I won a district science competition. I had built a functioning model of a wind turbine out of cardboard and wire powered by a small battery with hand-drawn diagrams explaining renewable energy. My teacher hugged me, the principal shook my hand, and I took the ribbon home, proud enough to burst. My mother hung it on the refrigerator for one day. The next morning it was gone. When I asked her where it went, she told me she put it away so Daniel would not feel overshadowed. You must learn to be thoughtful, Emily. His confidence is more fragile than yours. We all must protect him. That was the day I learned that excellence was not my armor. It was my shame. Daniel rarely had to earn anything. If he wanted something, it was given. If he failed, excuses were made. If he behaved poorly, my mother stroked his hair and whispered that boys just have too much energy. When I cried because he broke my favorite toy, my father called me dramatic and told me to share. When he pushed me in the hallway and I scraped my knee, my mother said I should not have been in his way. Sacrifice was a daughter's duty. It was said so often that eventually it did not feel like a sentence. It felt like a law of nature. I learned to be quiet when Daniel shouted. I learned to surrender what was mine before anyone had to ask. I learned that love was not given for being good, only for being useful. As I grew older, I tried to earn approval the only way I knew how, by striving. Straight A's, captain of the debate team, scholarships, awards. But no matter how brightly I shined, I could never illuminate myself in their eyes. My accomplishments were tolerated, not celebrated, because they did not fit the story my family wanted to tell. Daniel was the future. I was the foundation beneath it. If Daniel wanted to play baseball, we all attended every game. If I had a piano recital, only my grandmother ever came. God rest her soul. She was the only one who looked at me like I mattered simply because I existed. I hold her memory close because she was proof that love can be given freely. One evening when I was about 14, my father called me into his study. Daniel sat beside him slouched in a leather chair like a prince bored by court. My father laced his fingers together and looked at me with the grave seriousness he reserved for business matters. Your brother has a future that depends on stability and support, he said. You will always be strong, Emily. You will always land on your feet. Daniel needs more from us. So we expect you to make sacrifices as needed. That was the official decree, spoken like a commandment, etched into my bones before I had even learned who I wanted to be. When I left the room, Daniel smirked. He did not thank me. He did not need to. Entitlement does not say thank you. It only takes. Looking back, I realize I was raised not to live my own life, but to be a safety net for someone else's, to cushion his falls, to dim my shine, so his could glow brighter to serve the story they believed in. The Carter legacy, a son destined for greatness, a daughter designed to support. And I played the role for years because children do not choose their stories. They inherit them. I was born into a world where my worth was always weighed against his needs and always found lacking. But even then, beneath the obedience, beneath the quiet compliance, something in me refused to die. A small spark, a stubborn truth, a whisper that said, "You are more than this." For years, I ignored it because survival required silence. But the night of that wedding, when my father gripped my arm and hissed that I owed him my life, that spark became fire. It had been waiting a long time. Leaving home at 18 felt less like a milestone and more like an escape. I packed my car with 2 suitcases, a stack of textbooks, and the quiet determination of someone who had spent her entire childhood being groomed to shrink. My parents did not cry when I left. My mother adjusted my collar, told me not to embarrass the family, and reminded me that girls who focus too much on ambition often regret it later. My father shook my hand like I was a business associate, not his daughter, and told me I would always have a home to return to if I remembered where I came from, which really meant if I obeyed. Daniel did not wake up to say goodbye. He never needed to. His life was waiting for him paved and polished. Mine, I had to carve out with my own hands. College was my first taste of freedom, and it was intoxicating. I worked to exhaustion not because someone demanded it, but because every hour spent studying felt like building a foundation for a life that belonged only to me. I majored in finance, took extra classes, tutored freshmen, and interned every summer. While other students partied, I chased internships, certificates, and every edge I could find. I lived in tiny apartments with leaky sinks and thrift store furniture, but every morning I woke up knowing my life was mine. No one could take that from me. When I graduated near the top of my class, I sent my parents an email with my diploma photo attached. My mother replied with a single sentence, "Do not forget, we raised you to succeed." My father wrote nothing. Daniel posted a celebratory picture of himself golfing that same day captioned "Legacy in Motion." He received 500 likes. I received silence. I entered the corporate world like someone starved stepping into a banquet hall. I worked at a private equity firm, first, a place where egos strutted around in tailored suits and interns were expected to sacrifice sleep and sanity for a shot at survival. I thrived anyway. 50-hour weeks became 70. I took notes in every meeting, volunteered for every miserable project, and built expertise that no one could ignore. When men twice my age talked over me, I talked louder. When they dismissed me, I outperformed them. Success did not come easy, but it came. Promotions, bonuses, respect earned in grudging increments. I called home sometimes, not for comfort, but for habit. Every call was the same. My mother asking whether I met anyone nice yet. My father reminding me money meant nothing without family. Daniel bragging about whatever privilege had just landed in his lap. They did not ask if I was lonely. They did not ask if I was proud. They certainly never said they were proud of me. But I kept building, year after year, brick by brick, until one winter afternoon when a miracle disguised as paperwork happened, a bonus, the kind that changes lives. The kind you do not tell anyone about if you have the kind of family who sees your success as their entitlement. I went online that night and found it. The condo, high floor, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake, sleek marble counters, warm wood, enough space to breathe. I signed the papers with a shaking hand and sat on the floor of my new living room surrounded by empty space and unreal quiet. I cried that night, not because I was sad, but because I realized for the first time in my life that I had built something no one else could claim. I texted my mother a photo of the view. Her reply came 10 minutes later, a voice memo. She sounded confused rather than impressed. A condo. Why such a big place? You are alone. Emily, you should think about the future, a family, children. Do not waste your best years. I stared at my phone numb. Moments later, another message arrived, from Daniel. Heard you bought a place. Congrats, I guess. But you know, Mom and Dad always dreamed of a family home for my kids someday. You are lucky to have the money to help make that happen. Lucky, as if luck had anything to do with it. As if every sleepless night, every insult swallowed every door I pried open with grit instead of connections was just chance. But I said nothing. Silence was easier then. I invited them to visit once. Just once. They stood inside my living room like tourists in a foreign country. My father nodded stiffly, scanning the view like he was evaluating a business asset. My mother ran her finger along the marble counter, not impressed, not pleased, just measuring. She smiled politely and said it was nice, but it would be better if it felt more like a family home. Daniel did not even come. He sent a message saying he had golf practice. They stayed 15 minutes. When they left, I stood in the doorway feeling foolish. I had expected pride, maybe gratitude, maybe even a hint of affection. Instead, all I saw in their eyes was calculation. To them, my success was not mine. It was a resource waiting to be redistributed. I realized in that moment that climbing out of a cage does not guarantee freedom if you carry the bars with you in your mind. Yet I kept rising. I earned respect in boardrooms. I learned how to negotiate until silence felt like pressure on the other person, not on me. My life became routine, steady, full. I had friends who admired me, mentors who respected me, colleagues who depended on me. Slowly, painfully, I built a life where my worth was not questioned. But whenever the phone rang and it was my mother, I felt myself shrink, even if only for a moment. That was the power they still had. That was the grip I had not yet broken, until the wedding. until the moment my father grabbed my arm and snarled that I owed him my life, until the shove, the crash, the blood, until the truth became undeniable. They had never wanted a daughter. They had wanted a donor, a supporter, a silent foundation beneath their golden sun. But I had built myself up from nothing. I had risen without them, and that terrified them. Because once a daughter learns she does not owe her family anything, she becomes powerful in a way they cannot control. I wish I could say the wedding blindsided me, that I walked into that glittering rooftop ballroom with no idea what storm was waiting. But the truth is, the warning signs came long before the champagne flowed and the cameras flashed. They came quietly disguised as traditions, as expectations, as casual comments meant to sound innocent, but delivered with precision sharp enough to cut. It started months before the ceremony, when my mother called me in her most performative tone, the one she used when she wanted something but also wanted credit for sounding gracious. "Emily, darling," she said, drawing out the syllables like sugar she hoped would mask the poison. "Your brother's wedding will be such a beautiful celebration of family. You will help make it special, won't you?" It was not a question. It never was. My mother did not ask. She assigned. I was accustomed to that tone. It always meant two things, sacrifice and silence. So I asked, "What do you need?" pretending I did not already know the answer. Money, of course, delivered like it was a small favor. Not a demand. No, she would never call it that. Instead, she said things like, "It would be so meaningful if you could contribute. You know Daniel is building his future and weddings are expensive." And because I was still operating under the old programming, the deeply buried belief that giving would finally earn me belonging, I said yes. Not just yes, but generously yes. I paid $60,000 to secure the florist, the lighting design, the string quartet, and the decor that turned that rooftop into a fantasy world. I called in favors from vendors I had worked with professionally, people who respected me, not my family name. I negotiated prices, reviewed contracts, and coordinated schedules, while Daniel did nothing but select cake flavors and post engagement photos captioned, "Blessed." My mother thanked me once in passing like she was complimenting a waitress for refilling her water. My father did not mention my contribution at all. Daniel sent a thumbs-up emoji. That was my gratitude. Around that time, I overheard a phone conversation between Daniel and one of his friends while I visited home for a dinner I had felt guilty refusing. He was bragging in that effortless tone. Privileged men are born fluent in saying Emily has money. She'll help with the condo. You know how family is. I stood frozen in the hallway, fingers curled into my palms, heartbeat thick in my chest. Not one moment of hesitation. Not one hint that this was a discussion I had never been part of. He spoke as if my future were already spent, as if my autonomy were simply a placeholder until he needed it. I wanted to walk into the room and confront him, demand to know who he thought he was to plan my life like a budget line item. But the little girl inside me, the one trained to avoid confrontation because confrontation brought punishment, stayed still. I left that night early saying I was tired. What I really was cracking. Days later, the real blow came. My father requested a meeting at his office. Requested, as if I could refuse. His assistant called to schedule it like I was an employee, reporting to a boss instead of a daughter visiting a parent. When I arrived, he offered me a seat and slid a folder across his desk. The paper was thick, embossed, formal. At first, I thought it might be some business venture. He wanted me involved in something transactional and cold, but at least professional. But when I opened it, my stomach dropped. It was a financial authorization drafted in legal language giving my parents joint decision rights over my condo purchase. My name and signature line stared back at me like a trap. I looked up, speechless. My father steepled his fingers and smiled like a man explaining common sense to a child. "It is only practical, Emily. We are family. Daniel is building a life. You will sign it." It was not a suggestion. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Dad," I said slowly, carefully, because one wrong tone could turn the room into a battlefield. "This is my property. I bought it. With my money, my career, my effort." He waved a dismissive hand as if I had commented on the weather. "Everything you have came from us. We raised you. We provided for you. We gave you the foundation to succeed. Now it is your turn to uphold the family." I felt heat flush my face, a mix of anger and disbelief. "I am not signing this," I said. Calm, controlled, practiced dignity. I picked up the folder, stood, and placed it gently on the desk. My father's jaw tightened. He leaned forward, voice low and almost pitying. "Do not embarrass this family." It was a threat disguised as guidance. Embarrass was his favorite word. It meant disobey. It meant defy the narrative he curated. It meant show the world we are not perfect. I walked out without another word, my legs trembling but my spine straight. That was the first time I truly understood they were preparing to take something from me. It was not love they wanted. It was ownership. Weeks passed and the tension in my chest never eased. My mother dropped comments like little knives hidden in lace. "A good daughter gives, especially to her brother. You would not want to be alone forever, would you? Sacrifice brings blessings." One night, she called me late, pretending to sound emotional. "Daniel is so lucky to have you. He knows you will always support him." I stared at my ceiling, the lights of the city tracing silver lines across my walls, and I felt something old and heavy shifting inside me. Fear turning into anger, submission calcifying into resolve. Then came the final hint, so casual it almost fooled me. Over coffee, the morning before the wedding, Daniel leaned back in his chair and said with a smirk so slight it barely moved his lips, "Just do not make a scene tomorrow, Em. It will all go smoother if you do not try to make it about you." I set my cup down slowly, fingers steady though my pulse wasn't. About me, I never tried to make anything about me. That was the irony. My entire life had been training in disappearance, but something in his tone sent a chill crawling across my skin. He was not worried about me ruining his wedding. He was anticipating my refusal. He already knew the plan. They expected me to acquiesce. They expected me to fold. They expected me to be the dependable sacrifice, the easy donation, the daughter whose role was to enable the son's ascension. When I left that coffee shop, I knew they were coming for me at the wedding. I just did not know how public, how cruel, how irreversible it would be. My mind tried to warn me, whispering fears like storm sirens. But trauma does a strange thing. It trains you to hope that maybe this time will be different. Maybe this time they will be proud. Maybe this time love will feel like love. It never did. The night before the wedding, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, smoothing the navy dress I would wear, telling myself not to ruin the day, not to start conflict, not to provoke. I whispered encouragement to myself like a prayer. "You can survive this. Just stay calm. Just be graceful. Just get through it." I did not yet understand that sometimes survival is not about enduring quietly. Sometimes survival is saying no. Sometimes survival is refusing to shrink one more inch. I walked into that wedding hoping to avoid war. They walked into it ready to claim their prize. And everything that happened after was inevitable. The morning of the wedding dawned soft and golden over Chicago, the lake catching sunlight like polished glass, the city breathing in quiet anticipation. I woke early, not because I was excited, but because anxiety had settled into my bones like cold. I moved through my condo silently making coffee, staring out over the skyline from my floor to ceiling windows, trying to steady my heartbeat. Today would be beautiful. Today would be dangerous. I pressed the rim of the mug to my lips, breathing in steam, and told myself I could do this. Just one day. Then I would retreat back to my life, my peace, my autonomy. I chose my navy dress, the same one that hung like a promise in my closet. I brushed my hair into a sleek bun, applied soft makeup, and placed pearl earrings on like armor. Understated, elegant, invisible but not weak. That was the plan. Then my phone buzzed. A message from my mother. "Come to the hotel early. Family photos. Do not be late." No, please. No, thank you. Just command disguised as tradition. I exhaled slowly, grabbed my keys, and left. The hotel lobby was a parade of luxury. White roses, gold accents, crisp uniforms. I stepped inside and felt a wave of déjà vu, the unsettling sensation of walking into a trap I already knew was there. The ballroom doors were open, revealing florists adjusting massive arrangements and lighting technicians fine-tuning the warm glow that made everything look magical. I had arranged most of it, and yet not a single person there knew my name. My mother spotted me first gliding toward me in a pale satin robe, hair-pinned diamonds glittering at her collar. "Ah, finally," she said, eyes scanning me from head to toe as if checking quality control. "You look formal." A backhanded compliment. Traditional Carter approval. Before I could respond, she turned. "Come, we need to talk before photos." My shoulders stiffened. That tone always meant I was about to lose something. She led me into a private suite where my father stood already in his tuxedo posture, rigid expression stern. Daniel lounged on a velvet sofa, scrolling his phone tie undone, exuding casual entitlement. His bride and bridesmaids sat nearby, whispering stealing glances at me like they were studying me as a specimen. My mother closed the door. The air shifted. This was not a photo preparation. It was a stage. My father did not waste time. "We need you to sign something," he said, and from his inside jacket pocket he pulled a folded document, crisp and heavy. My stomach sank. "Not again." "Dad, I already told you I began," but he held up his hand. "This is not complicated, Emily. Do not make it dramatic." That word again. Dramatic. Translated, inconvenient. Defiant. A woman with boundaries. He unfolded the document and placed it on the marble counter like an offering or a sacrifice. It was the same authorization form, the same attempt to claw control over what I had built. Only now, two witnesses stood behind him, my mother lips tight with expectation, and Daniel wearing a smirk so faint most people would miss it, but I felt it like a knife. My father's voice was low steady. "Sign it. Today should be about family unity. You will not ruin this day." A chill crawled up my spine. My mother moved closer, placing a manicured hand over mine lightly like affection. "A good daughter gives with grace," she whispered. Daniel looked up, then eyes meeting mine, bored but satisfied. "Come on, Em. Do not be difficult. It is not a big deal." The words came soft but poisonous. Not a big deal to them, because it was not their future being stolen. Not a big deal because I existed to support his. I studied the paper. The lines of legal language blurred. My name, their names, authority, control, ownership disguised as love. I felt the familiar pressure building in my chest, the old urge to give in, to keep peace, to avoid punishment. My hands trembled slightly, but I pulled them back. "No," I said quietly. My father blinked like he could not process the meaning. "No," I swallowed. "I will not sign this." My mother sucked in a breath as if I had cursed in church. Daniel scoffed, rolling his eyes. "Dad, she is doing this on purpose. She always wants attention." I turned to him, a bitter laugh trapped behind my teeth. Attention I had spent my life trying not to take space. But entitlement never sees the work of the person it exploits. My father's jaw clenched. His voice dropped into that chilling register I knew too well. "Do not test me, Emily. Today is too important. This family has sacrificed for you." Sacrificed. A rewritten history so neat it erased the truth. I straightened my spine, pulse racing but voice steady. "I am not signing. My condo is mine." Silence hit the room. Thick. Electric. Dangerous. My father inhaled slowly, his face hardening into something cold, brutal, ancestral. "You would deny your own brother comfort. You would shame us like this. Shame." The word they weaponized like a whip. My mother whispered, "Emily, think of the future. Who will take care of you? No husband, no children. Your brother's family will be all you have." It was not love. It was a threat. Dependence disguised as destiny. Daniel leaned back, arms folded, casual cruelty dripping from his tone. "If you do not want to give willingly, Em, then maybe we will handle it our way later." I felt that sentence in my bones. A warning, a promise, a plan already in motion. My throat tightened, but not with fear. With clarity. They would take everything if I allowed it once. so I spoke softly, deliberately. I earned my life, and I will not give it away. My father's face darkened, a storm gathering behind his eyes. His voice dropped to a whisper sharp enough to cut skin. You are making a mistake. I thought for a moment he would shove me right there in that private room surrounded by white silk and champagne flutes. I saw his fingers twitch, but then the coordinator knocked, chirping about photos, and the mask slid back onto his face. He forced a smile so stiff it looked painful. We will talk later, he said, but I knew then there would be no talk. There would be punishment. The room emptied. The guests arrived. The ceremony began. Vows rings applause. And all the while, beneath the romance and roses, an invisible war was breathing. They thought I would break quietly. They thought I would surrender eventually. They did not know that something inside me had already shifted, already sharpened, already chosen survival. So when my father later took the microphone and lied to a ballroom full of people about my gift, he thought I would bow like always. But rebellion was no longer a spark in me. It was wildfire. I did not know how violent his response would be. I did not know it would end in blood and marble and sirens. But I knew this: I was done being theirs. And that was enough to terrify them. Weddings are supposed to feel like magic, like bright beginnings wrapped in flowers and champagne and promises whispered under soft lights. But that day felt like a countdown, a slow tightening of the world around me, each minute pressing harder against my ribs. The ceremony unfolded like a glossy fairy tale staged for public consumption. Rows of white chairs lined the rooftop petals, scattered in perfect arcs, the Chicago skyline stretching behind us like a witness. Guests settled with programs in hand, dabbing cheeks already glistening with emotional anticipation. A string quartet played a slow, classical piece as the bride walked down the aisle, veil flowing pearls, shimmering like dew, her expression serene in that curated way brides master for photos. Daniel looked adoring, smug in his happiness, soaking in every camera flash like sunlight. I watched the scene and tried to breathe, tried to focus on something other than the clench in my stomach and the echo of my father's words that morning, the threat disguised as guidance. I stood at the edge of the crowd, poised in my navy dress, the picture of calm to anyone who did not know the storm inside me. My mother glanced back at me once, her eyes sharp, calculating, as if she expected me to crumble on command. My father did not look at me at all, not during the vows, not during the rings, or the kiss, or the applause. He was a man who believed control only mattered when exercised in front of others, and there would be time for that later. When the ceremony ended, guests flowed into the reception space, laughing, clinking glasses, offering compliments. The air buzzed with that heady celebration energy that comes from expensive champagne and curated joy. I held my glass, but barely sipped, nerves prickling like static under my skin. Hours passed in a blur of small talk and speeches and toasts that all revolved around Daniel's future, Daniel's happiness, Daniel's legacy. I had become expert at fading into the background at such events, offering polite smiles and nodding at comments I did not care about. Poor Emily, not married yet. Someone whispered behind me as if my life existed only in contrast to his milestones. She works too much, probably scared men away, another voice chimed, amused and cruel. I breathed through it, grounded myself in the memory of signing my condo papers, of seeing the city spread beneath me like proof of everything I had built on my own. Their opinions did not change what I had earned, or so I told myself. Still, fear curled in my stomach when the music paused and my father stepped toward the microphone. He looked powerful, confident, a man who believed he owned every room he entered. Daniel stood behind him, smirking with the arrogance of someone certain the world would always favor him. My mother watched from the side, hands clasped in expression, hovering between triumph and tension. This is the moment, I thought. I felt it like a storm cloud above my head, heavy and dark and waiting to burst. My father tapped the microphone gently. Conversation hushed. The jazz musicians lowered their instruments. 200 sets of eyes turned to him. Family and friends, he began, voice booming with authority and pride. Tonight is a celebration of love, unity, and the strength of our family. Cheers rose. Glasses lifted, smiles widened, and as our family grows, we honor not only the bride and groom, but the values that built this household: sacrifice, commitment, loyalty. I stood still, heart pounding so hard I felt it in my throat. His eyes found me then, unblinking, cold, triumphant. And in that spirit, I am proud to share something special, something meaningful. Our Emily has decided to gift Daniel and his lovely bride a penthouse as their wedding present. The room erupted. Applause roared like a wave, rising and crashing around me. Someone gasped in admiration. Someone else called me incredible. A woman dabbed her eyes, overcome by the beauty of such a gesture. I stood frozen breath, trapped in my chest vision, narrowing until all I saw were faces turned toward me, expectant, approving, unaware that they were praising a lie. That penthouse was mine, my life, my freedom. My father had just offered it like a platter at a gala, like I was property too. I set my glass down on the table behind me, slowly, fingers steady despite the tremor running through my veins. My pulse thundered in my ears. The applause continued a celebration built on betrayal. "No," I said, soft at first, drowned in noise, then again louder, slicing through the cheers like ice. "No!" The clapping stopped mid-motion. Heads snapped in my direction. The air thickened, tense and expectant, as if the city itself had paused to listen. I stepped forward, spine straight, voice clear. I did not agree to give my brother anything. The words dropped like stones into a glass lake. Ripples of shock spread through the room. A hush fell so complete I could hear the soft hum of the air conditioning, the faint clink of ice settling in a nearby glass. My mother's face drained of color. Daniel blinked in disbelief, mouth falling open just enough to reveal his confusion that someone might deny him something. My father's expression darkened, a storm solidifying behind his eyes. Whispers erupted around me. Selfish, ungrateful, embarrassing. Why would she ruin this? I felt every judgment like a slap, but stayed still, chin lifted. I earned my home. I said it calmly, every syllable clipped with dignity. I am not giving it away. My father stepped down from the stage, slowly like a predator stalking prey. He reached me in seconds, his face a mask of restrained fury. He grabbed my arm, fingers digging into my skin, his grip bruising instantly. His voice was low enough only I could hear, but laced with venom capable of killing. "You owe us for the life we gave you." The words scraped through me, familiar and suffocating, sharpened by decades of expectation and control. My breath trembled, but my voice did not. "I owe you nothing." His eyes flashed. Rage twisted his features, stripping away the polished veneer he wore for guests. Then, with no hesitation, no shame, no fear of consequence, he shoved me. Hard, my body lurched backward. My heel slipped. I crashed into the corner of a table. Pain exploded like fire at the back of my head. A scream cut through the air. Someone else's voice, not mine. Glass shattered. The room spun violently, ceiling lights blurring into streaks of white. I felt warm liquid sliding down my neck, pooling near my collarbone. My knees buckled. The floor rushed up to meet me. I heard gasps. A chair toppled. Someone said, "Oh my God." A phone lifted. That red recording light blinked again, cruel and bright, a witness no one could silence. My mother rushed forward, kneeling beside me, face etched into a mask of horror, but her words slithered like poison. "Look what you made him do." My vision darkened at the edges. My fingers twitched weakly against the marble floor. Daniel stood above me, champagne glass in hand, smirk twisting into something crueler. "Drama queen," he muttered, just loud enough for me to hear. I could not respond. My body felt heavy, distant, fading. The sirens came fast. Paramedics pushed through the crowd. Voices blurred into static. My head was lifted, gently bandaged, quickly stretcher straps tightening around me. My mother's cries echoed hysterical for the audience, but cold in her eyes when they flicked toward me. My father vanished somewhere in the chaos. Shame does that to cowards. As they rolled me toward the exit, I lifted my gaze one last time. The chandelier above glimmered like frozen stars. Guests whispered and stared, torn between horror and curiosity, phones raised as if tragedy was entertainment. My vision dimmed. The last thing I heard before the ambulance doors closed was someone saying, "She ruined the wedding." And then, quietly, another voice, firm, sharp, righteous enough to make my heart stutter. "No." He did. Darkness folded over me like a curtain falling at the end of an act. But this was not the end. It was the beginning of the reckoning they never saw coming. I woke to the sound of beeping. Slow, steady, almost soothing, if not for the sharp ache slicing through my skull and the heavy fog clinging to my thoughts. The world was blurry at first lights, harsh and sterile above me, ceiling tiles drifting in and out of focus like unfamiliar stars. The smell of antiseptic hung thick in the air, stinging my nose. My mouth was dry, my throat raw. I tried to swallow and a dull pain shot down my neck. Something tight was wrapped around my head, compressing my temples. My limbs felt heavy as though gravity had doubled. For a moment, I could not remember where I was. Then the memory hit me like the shove all over again. My father's hand, the table corner, the applause turning to gasps. My mother's voice accusing instead of comforting. "Look what you made him do." And then, everything black. Panic surged before my body could move. I inhaled sharply, chest tight, heart thudding against my ribs. My fingers twitched under rough sheets. A soft voice pulled me back. "Easy. You are safe." I blinked and a nurse came into focus, her scrubs pale blue, her expression calm, steady, trained to soothe. "You took a bad fall," she said gently. "You are at Chicago General. Concussion. Scalp laceration. We are monitoring for swelling." She adjusted the strap holding my oxygen tube. My voice came out hoarse, barely audible. "How long?" She glanced at her chart. "A few hours since arrival. Paramedics said you lost consciousness at the venue. You are lucky." Lucky. The word felt wrong in my ears like a cruel joke. I tried to sit upright, but dizziness slammed into me, spinning the room like a carousel that would not stop. The nurse pressed a hand to my shoulder, firm but gentle. "Do not move too fast. Rest." My chest burned where my father's hand had collided. A deep soreness like the echo of violence lodged in my ribs. My head throbbed with each heartbeat. The nurse lifted a cup straw, brushing my lips. Sip, slowly. Water trickled down my throat, blessed and painful at once. She looked at me with the kind of expression that carries both care and suspicion, the kind reserved for situations marked not by accident, but intent. "Someone asked if you wanted to file a report," she said. I stared at her, the question hanging like a weight above me. Did someone hurt you? I knew what the right answer was. I knew what the truth was. But trauma trains you to doubt your own reality, to protect those who harm you, to believe loyalty equals survival. My lips parted, but no sound came. The nurse did not push. She had seen this before. She squeezed my hand once, then stepped away, leaving me alone with the truth I had swallowed for decades. My phone buzzed weakly beside me on the tray table screen, lighting up with notifications. Missed calls. Messages stacked like a tower, threatening to collapse. I fumbled for it, fingers stiff and shaky. The first notification was from a coworker. "Emily, are you okay? We saw the live stream." Live stream. My breath caught, my pulse spiked. My father's shove, my fall, the blood, it was all online. The moment I refused to disappear was no longer a secret buried in a ballroom. It had escaped. Next message from my childhood cousin. "I am so sorry. This is not okay." Then another, and another. Hundreds, maybe thousands. I opened a link. A grainy video filled the screen, shaky but unmistakable. Me, standing firm. My father lunging. The impact. My body collapsing. My mother kneeling and blaming me. Comments flooded beneath it. She said no, and he attacked her. "This is disgusting. This family should be ashamed. Protect her. Hold him accountable." A single tear slid down my temple, absorbed into the bandage. The world saw me, not as the quiet, obedient daughter, not as the background to my brother's shine, not as the girl who swallowed humiliation to keep peace. They saw me as a woman who stood up and paid in blood. The nurse returned with a Dr. Young but serious stethoscope cold against my chest. "You have a mild concussion and 6 stitches. We want to keep you overnight. You will be okay, but rest is critical. Can you tell me what happened?" His voice neutral enough to give me an out, firm enough to give me a chance. I stared at his face, at the sterile white wall, at the IV line taped to my arm. Words piled in my throat. My father pushed me. I refused to give him something he felt entitled to. He hurt me because I said no, but instead, I whispered, "I fell." He held my gaze for a long moment. He knew. They always know. But he nodded the way doctors do when someone needs time to reclaim their truth. Then my phone buzzed again. This time, a text from my mother. "Delete that video and apologize. You embarrassed us. You ruined Daniel's day. You know how your father gets." The audacity twisted my stomach. Even as I lay bruised and bandaged, she was rewriting the story. Victim becomes villain. Violence becomes inconvenience. I typed slowly, fingers shaking. "No." I stared at the word. 3 letters, small, soft, but powerful enough to break a lineage. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. A voice message. I pressed play. "Emily, it is Ethan. Call me when you can. We saw what happened. We are taking care of everything." Ethan Wells. Mentor. CEO. The one person in my life who had ever protected my interests for my sake and not for his own benefit. I closed my eyes and exhaled. For the first time since childhood, safety did not feel like submission. It felt like power. The nurse dimmed the lights and left. Alone, I stared at the ceiling pane pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. I thought of Daniel laughing with a champagne flute in hand while I bled on marble. I thought of my father walking away without looking back. I thought of my mother whispering blame into my ear instead of comfort. A lifetime of moments collapsed into one realization. I had never been part of a family. I had been part of an empire, and empires do not love. They own. That night in a hospital bed under fluorescent lights, I learned something else too. Empires fall, and I was done being their silent foundation. I did not know exactly how yet, but I felt the shift inside me deep and permanent, like steel settling into place. My silence had always protected them. From this moment forward, my voice would protect me. The next morning, sunlight filtered weakly through the hospital blinds, painting thin gold stripes across the sheets. My head still throbbed with every heartbeat, the ache deep enough to feel like it lived in bone rather than flesh. But the fog had lifted just enough for clarity to settle in its place. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about every time I had lowered my voice to survive, every time I had made myself small so someone else could feel big. All roads led to here, to a hospital bed with dried blood in my hair and bruises on my arm where my father's fingers had dug into me. A knock sounded at the door. Before I could answer, it opened and in walked Ethan Wells in a tailored navy suit that looked out of place against the pale hospital walls, yet somehow brought more comfort than any medication could. He was tall, composed, the kind of man whose presence quieted a room, not with arrogance, but with certainty. I had met him 6 years ago when I was still clawing my way through late nights and office politics. He noticed my work before anyone else did. He saw potential where others saw inconvenience. And unlike my father, he never viewed my ambition as rebellion. He saw it as a gift. Now here he was standing at the foot of my hospital bed with silent fury simmering beneath his controlled expression. He did not approach like someone offering pity. He approached like someone preparing for war. "Emily," he said, and the steel in his voice nearly undid me. For a moment I could not speak, my throat thickened, emotion tightening like a fist. I swallowed. "You saw it," I whispered. "The video." He nodded once. "It is everywhere, and we are not letting this go quietly." He moved closer, pulling a chair to my bedside. "You do not have to fight them alone." I blinked hard, because if I let myself fully absorb that sentence, I might break. "I have been alone my whole life when it came to them," I said quietly. The words left my lips before I filtered them. He studied me, eyes narrowing slightly, not with judgment, but understanding. Not anymore. I did not realize until that moment how much I had trained myself to stand alone, even in pain. Then another knock. 2 attorneys stepped inside, folders in hand. Suits, crisp eyes, sharp. The kind of people who spoke fluent legal precision and smelled like polished strategy. We already reviewed the footage the first lawyer said. We also reviewed the contract you signed with Ethan regarding your property assets. Clause 14.5, anti-coercion, asset protection in family-based disputes. My hand moved weakly toward the cup of water. This was the clause Ethan had insisted on when I purchased my condo. At the time, I laughed, thinking no one would ever dare try to take something so personal from me. But he said something then that echoed now like prophecy. Sometimes the biggest threat to a woman's assets is her own family. Now here I was, staring at the echo of foresight. The lawyer continued. The public assault triggered legal protection on your behalf. We can block any attempt to claim or manipulate property transfer. We can freeze any legal action they try to take. And we can pursue charges if you want to. If I want to. The most foreign phrase I had ever heard. Choice, autonomy, power without apology. My phone buzzed again. This time the caller ID flashed Daniel. I ignored it. Buzz. Mother. Buzz. Unknown number likely tied to the chaos unfolding in their social circles. I let it vibrate until it stopped. Ethan leaned forward. Your father is already bleeding contracts. Several partners withdrew overnight. His company's stock dropped 16%, and that is only the beginning. I sucked in a breath. Consequences were real. For the first time in my life, their actions would not be hidden behind thick curtains of status and charm. My parents had always believed reputation insulated them, but reputation is paper thin when truth catches fire. The attorney opened a folder. We also arranged a protective statement. You will not need to speak to press. Everything will go through counsel. Press, I repeated. The word sounded surreal. The video has gone viral, he said gently. National platforms are picking it up. People are furious on your behalf. Something warm pressed against my ribs, fragile and powerful all at once. People believed me, not because I begged them to, not because I provided proof. The proof found me. For the first time, silence had been broken not by my voice, but by truth escaping on its own. The door opened abruptly. A nurse peeked in breathless. Miss Carter, you have visitors requesting permission to come up. She looked nervous. Then she lowered her voice. They are insisting. My stomach tightened. My parents. I knew it without hearing their names. The old fear returned out of habit, curling like old smoke. But this time, something else rose stronger than fear. Resolve. My blood pulsed not with panic, but with certainty. I lifted my chin. Tell security to refuse entry. No exceptions. The nurse nodded relief, softening her shoulders. Of course. As she left, I turned to Ethan, my voice steady iron forged from pain. I am not seeing them. Not now. Not ever, unless I choose it. He nodded once, pride flickering behind his calm posture. Good. They do not get to dictate the story anymore. I breathed in slowly, allowing those words to settle. He stood. When you are discharged, go home. Rest. My team will handle everything until you are ready. And when you are ready, we will pursue everything necessary. Public apology. Legal accountability. Asset protection. Reputation correction. You are not alone. The attorneys gathered their folders. Before they walked out, one paused. Miss Carter, this is not just a legal matter. It is precedent. You stood up to generational entitlement. Your refusal is powerful. I did not feel powerful, not yet. I felt bruised and exhausted and human, but a spark existed now where obedience once lived. When they left, Ethan placed a business card on my bedside table. Call anytime, for anything, even if you just need silence on the phone with someone who understands. I swallowed hard. Thank you. He held my gaze. Do not thank me. You earned your life. I am just protecting what you built." When he walked out, I stared at his card, then at my hands. They were trembling, but not from fear, from awakening. I leaned back against the pillow, the hum of machines steady beside me, and realized a truth that landed like a steady anchor in my chest. I had been raised to believe independence was selfish, that boundaries were betrayal, that loyalty meant surrender. But here in this sterile hospital room surrounded by legal shields and chosen allies, I finally saw my family for what they were: not protectors, not guides, but takers who mistook my strength for servitude. And now they were watching everything they valued crumble in real time. Not because I attacked them, but because I stopped letting them attack me. As the afternoon light softened against the blinds, I closed my eyes and let the weight lift inch by inch. I did not know what came next, but I knew one thing with absolute clarity: my life would never again belong to people who believed I owed them my existence. I belonged to myself now, and nothing terrifies abusers more than someone they cannot control. I was discharged from the hospital the next afternoon, dizziness lingering but manageable, my hair still sticky where dried blood clung between strands despite 2 careful rinses. I left in silence, escorted by a hospital staff member, because reporters had already gathered outside, their voices clashing with flashing lights and snapping cameras, proof the story had spilled far beyond family gossip. I lowered my head, avoiding their questions. "Miss Carter, is it true your father assaulted you? Do you plan to press charges? Did the penthouse belong to you? How long has this been happening?" Their desperation for pieces of my pain would have once humiliated me, but humiliation seemed like a relic now belonging to the girl I was before marble and blood and truth going viral. A black car waited for me, tinted windows glinting harsh midday light. Inside was sanctuary cool, leather soft hum of the engine privacy that felt earned. The driver nodded respectfully. "Straight home. Miss Carter." "Yes, thank you." As the car pulled away, I leaned against the headrest, watching the city blur past in streaks of glass and steel. My phone buzzed non-stop. Notifications multiplied like wildfire. News alerts, social media tags, messages from colleagues, distant cousins, old classmates who had never liked me, but now claimed they always admired my strength. My hospital picture circulated online, the bandage visible, the bruise along my temple unmistakable. Headlines screamed across my screen. Heiress hospitalized after family altercation. Bride's brother's wedding turns violent. Daughter refuses forced financial demand, assaulted at ceremony. And then the one that hit hardest. She said no. They punished her. Thousands of comments. Women, men, people who had stood in similar rooms, swallowed similar expectations, survived similar wounds invisible to others. My heartbeat steadied as I scrolled. Finally, someone said it. "These families always think daughters exist to serve sons. Proud of her. Do not silence her. Protect her at all costs." My eyes burned, not with sadness, but with something like recognition. A world that once ignored women like me was finally listening. The car turned down my street. Outside my building, 2 news vans idled, cameras scanning each person entering. Security ushered me through a private door, shielding me like I was fragile. But I did not feel fragile. I felt sharpened, polished by pain into something precise. Upstairs, my condo welcomed me like a breath. Light poured through tall windows, washing the room in gold. I stood still, breathing in the scent of my own space, my life untouched by the hands that tried to claim it. Silence wrapped around me, but this time it did not suffocate. It soothed. Then my phone rang. "Ethan," I answered. "It has begun," he said simply. "Your father resigned under pressure this morning. Board forced him. Contract losses are piling up. Investors are distancing." I closed my eyes, inhaling slowly. Accountability felt heavy, astonishing, strange. My mother's text came seconds later. "Call us. This is a misunderstanding. Fix it." The audacity made my hands tremble with a cocktail of disbelief and dark amusement. Then Daniel's message arrived. "Are you happy you ruined our lives over nothing? You did this to us." That sentence was familiar. "You made him do it. Look what you caused. It was the anthem of abusers, the liturgy of control. But I had changed religions overnight. I typed nothing back. Silence was a scalpel now, not submission. The internet got louder. A trending video collage showed the wedding shove next to my silent refusal intercut with captions. This is what entitlement looks like. Raise daughters to be obedient, and you raise men who believe they own them. You are watching a legacy fall apart in real time. Comment sections burned like torches. Sponsors dropped my father's company. The bridal family issued a public statement condemning violence. The bride herself posted a single line on her story: "I did not sign up for this." Daniel's name trended next. Not for success, not for admiration, but for disgrace. The golden sun tarnished by truth. Headlines sharpened. Groom's family scandal overshadows luxury wedding. Corporate patriarch faces scrutiny after assault video. Daughter breaks silence on generational coercion. My phone buzzed again. An unknown number. I let it ring. Then voicemail. My father's voice rigid, cracking beneath forced authority. "Emily, this has gone far enough. Take it down. This is family business. We can handle this privately. Call me." There was a pause. Then the line cut. I replayed it once, twice. Not because I considered answering, but because hearing fear in my father's voice was a twist of justice I never expected to taste. His kingdom was burning, and he still believed he could command the flames. But fire does not negotiate. Later that day, a local news anchor reached out requesting an interview. Advocacy groups messaged offering support. Lawyers emailed updates. Ethan called twice more, assuring me every legal shield was in place. By evening, my parents released a statement, carefully worded, polished, hollow. "We regret the unfortunate incident and request privacy during this difficult time. Families have disagreements, and we love our daughter." It was a performance, a plea dressed like dignity. It fooled no one. Comments skewered them. If they loved her, she wouldn't be bleeding. Disagreements do not cause concussions. Privacy is not for abusers. By nightfall, stock tickers crawled across national screens announcing my father's downfall. Board votes, emergency meetings, corporate restructuring. Social media labeled my family entitled aristocrats masking dysfunction with wealth. The empire they worshipped cracked, then collapsed piece by piece. Not because I attacked it, but because I simply stepped out of the foundation role they forced me into. My phone buzzed again at midnight. A final message from my mother. "Please, come home. We can talk." I pictured our dining room table, the long one where Daniel sat nearest to their approval and I sat at the end. I imagined walking in being met with scolding disguised as concern manipulation packaged as forgiveness demands hidden in comfort. And I felt nothing but relief at having left that world behind. I typed one sentence. "I am home," and I blocked their numbers. Outside my window, city lights glimmered like constellations. Life moved beneath me, busy and bright. I touched the tender bruise on my temple, traced the line where a wound stitched itself into memory. For the first time in my life, I had not been punished for speaking. I had been believed, supported, protected. My family lost everything they used to cage me, and I lost nothing worth keeping. And somewhere deep inside, in the quiet place where little girls once shrink when fathers raise voices, something new bloomed. Not revenge, not triumph, freedom, quiet, steady, immovable, the kind that does not shout but endures, the kind they never wanted me to have, the kind I would never surrender again. Healing did not arrive like a cinematic moment with swelling music or dramatic revelation. It came quietly in the soft, ordinary hours when no one was watching, when the world went on with its business, and I sat with myself in a condo I had fought to keep not just legally, but spiritually. My bruises faded slower than expected. The deep purple at my temple shifted to green, then yellow, a private calendar marking the days since I stopped being theirs. The ache in my ribs lingered like a stubborn echo. When I first walked through my front door after the hospital, the familiar scent of lemon and cedar wrapped around me like an embrace I did not know I needed. I stood still for a long time, hand resting against the wall, feeling the steady heartbeat of home. Not theirs. Mine. The place felt different somehow, not because anything had changed, but because I finally belonged to myself inside it. For days, I moved slowly, like the air was heavier, like each step was a negotiation with gravity. I slept long hours, waking to sunlight pooling on the hardwood floors, warm and golden like a promise instead of a threat. I brewed coffee strong and fragrant and sat on the couch staring out at Lake Michigan, the water shifting in hues of silver and blue. The skyline stretched beyond it, towering and indifferent, yet somehow comforting. The world was large and mine to exist in without permission. Sometimes I cried not from pain, but from release. Tears slid silently as I watched steam rise from my mug or traced the stitching on my pillowcase. Years of swallowed words and buried hurt clawed their way up, not violently, but patiently, as if they had been waiting for the moment I gave myself permission to feel anything other than survival. I journaled in long, messy loops, ink smudging as I wrote. Not crafted sentences, just truth spilling out. I wrote about lies disguised as tradition, about love that demanded my silence, about the terrifying beauty of saying no. I wrote the sentence I never had the courage to think before I was never theirs to own. On some mornings, I played soft jazz, the notes drifting like silk through the apartment. On others, I sat in silence, listening to my breath, relearning the sound of my own existence. I returned to work, slowly remote at first. My colleagues sent food baskets, flowers, messages that made my heart ache with gratitude. The kindness of strangers and distant acquaintances felt more sincere than any word my parents had ever spoken. Therapy began the following week. A woman with warm eyes and calm presence listened without interrupting, without judging. When I hesitated, she waited, not pushing, not rushing. "Healing will not punish you," she said once, voice gentle. "It will make room for you." I let her words sit in me the way sunlight settles into skin, warm, slow, unforced. I started running again, tentative steps on the treadmill at first, then outside by the lake when my body grew steadier. The air tasted different after all this sharper, cleaner, like reclaiming breath after years underwater. Movement reminded me I was still here, still living, still choosing. I cooked again 2 roasted vegetable salmon with lemon-thick soups filled with herbs. Nourishment became an act of rebellion. Rest became a declaration of worth. I lit candles in the evening, lavender and cedar blending into warmth. Sometimes I sat on the floor wrapped in a blanket, watching the city lights twinkle like tiny, hopeful signals, thousands of lives moving forward. Mine among them. Neighbors sent cards. Someone in the lobby I barely knew pressed a hand to my arm and whispered, "You were brave." I nodded, though I did not feel brave. Strength, I was learning, does not always roar. Sometimes it breathes quietly. Sometimes it rests. My social feeds continued to buzz the story evolving without my participation. Advocacy groups spoke for me. Commenters defended me. Women shared their own stories in threads beneath my name. It felt like standing in a room full of survivors who finally dared to turn on the lights. I did not reply to any messages from my parents, though they grew desperate, shifting from demands to pleas. "We are your family. We love you. Come home." But I had learned a truth that cannot be unlearned. Love that threatens love, that wounds love, that requires disappearance is not love. It is possession, and I was no longer something to be owned. With each sunrise, I shed another layer of fear. With each nightfall, I stitched another thread of strength. One morning, standing at the window, coffee warming my palms, a quiet certainty settled over me, steady as stone. I had survived them. I had survived silence. I had survived expectation. And now, I was not just surviving. I was beginning to live. I whispered to the empty room because it deserved to be spoken aloud, the words soft but unbreakable. Silence does not protect them anymore. It protects me. Outside, the world moved forward. And finally, so did I. I did not see them for months, and I did not expect to. Life filled itself with things that felt real for the first time. Morning runs along the lake. Quiet dinners with people who had earned the right to sit at my table, the hum of my condo at dusk when the city exhaled into evening. Peace had a weight and shape I had never known, and I carried it carefully. Then came a Thursday morning in late autumn. The air was crisp, the lake dark and still under a gray sky. I wore a simple wool coat and carried my laptop bag as I headed downstairs to meet a colleague for brunch. The elevator doors slid open into the lobby, and I saw them. My parents stood near the marble reception desk, hands clasped tightly, faces pale and desperate. For a brief second, I froze, the air around me turning sharp. My mother looked smaller than I remembered, her posture no longer stiff with superiority, but hunched with defeat. My father looked older, shoulders slumped beneath the weight of consequences he once believed he would never face. Their eyes snapped up when they heard my steps. "Emily," my mother whispered, voice trembling as though the word itself might shatter. My father stepped forward quickly, as if afraid I might vanish. "We just want to talk." The lobby was silent except for the faint hum of the floor lamps. The receptionist looked at me, waiting. I lifted a hand slightly, a quiet request for space. My father's voice cracked. "Everything is falling apart. Daniel is lost, and we need you." It was not love in his tone-only need. The same bottomless entitlement wrapped in a new costume. My mother dabbed her eyes with a tissue. "The lawyers, the board, they are tearing your father apart. They say he is unfit. They say he is violent. This is your family. We need to show unity." I felt the faintest tug of the old instinct to comfort, to step in, to soften. But it evaporated under the memory of warm blood sliding down my temple, of sirens, of whispering guests who called me selfish as I tried to breathe through the pain. I stood tall, voice calm. Unity was not broken by me. It was broken the day he put his hands on me. My father swallowed hard, jaw tight. "I made a mistake. Nobody is perfect. We must move past it." My laugh was soft, not cruel, just tired of the absurdity. "You did not make a mistake. You made a choice. And now you are living with it." My mother's mask slipped, her desperation curdling into bitterness. "So you will throw away your family, your blood." "For what pride, boundaries," I replied simply. "Something no one in this family ever respected." She inhaled sharply, ready to strike with words, but my father raised a shaking hand, silencing her. He tried again, tone low, strained. "Emily, we can still fix this. Help us clean this up. Show the world we are united. You have always been strong, but this stubbornness is destroying us." My chest rose and fell slowly. "I am not destroying anything. The truth did that. The truth and your fists." A flicker of shame crossed his face, and for the first time in my life, I wondered if he finally saw himself clearly, or simply hated being seen. My mother stepped forward, voice rising in a sharp tremor. "We raised you. We gave you everything." The old script unchanged. I shook my head once. "You gave me life, not ownership." A pause. "And I owe you nothing." They looked stunned, as if the air had been punched from their lungs, as if the roles they assigned me had vanished before their eyes. My father's voice turned brittle, cracking under its own weight. "So that is it? After everything, you are done with us?" I felt the floor steady beneath my feet in a way it never had before. "I am done being hurt by you." I gestured to the security desk. "They will escort you out now." My parents stared, their world collapsing in the quiet elegance of a modern lobby with soft jazz humming from hidden speakers. My mother let out a tiny, choked sound, as if something inside her had snapped under the pressure of losing the daughter she never truly valued until she could no longer use her. My father opened his mouth, but no words came. Security approached gently, respectfully. "This way, sir." "This way, ma'am." They did not struggle. They just looked at me, a mixture of disbelief and despair, like they were seeing someone entirely new, someone who existed without their permission. As they walked toward the glass doors, my father turned one last time. "The world is cruel, Emily. You will regret this." I held his gaze, voice quiet but unshakable. "The world is not cruel. People are. And I survived the worst of them." The doors opened. Cold air rushed in. They stepped out into it, swallowed by the city they once believed they owned. The glass slid shut behind them. Silence followed. Not Empty silence. Clean silence. New silence. I stood still for a moment, breathing it in, letting the final thread between us dissolve. I had not lost a family. I had shed a cage. Sometimes healing does not look like triumph or noise or applause. Sometimes it looks like waking up in a quiet home and knowing you are safe. Sometimes it looks like making coffee with steady hands, feeling sunlight on your skin, breathing without bracing for impact. For so long, I believed family was something you earned by shrinking, by bending, by breaking yourself into small, obedient pieces. I believed loyalty meant silence, and love meant sacrifice without limit. I believed blood was thicker than boundaries, and daughters were meant to give until there was nothing left. But the night I hit the ballroom floor, the truth hit me too. Family does not demand your voice. Family does not punish your independence. Family does not ask for your future as payment for the past. And love that requires your suffering is not love at all. In the months that followed, I learned to speak in softer tones, not out of fear, but peace. I learned the strength of quiet confidence, the power of saying no without needing to explain. I learned that walking away is not abandoning anyone. Sometimes it is choosing to save yourself from being abandoned in slow, painful pieces. My parents called me ungrateful. They called me selfish. They called me cruel. But boundaries are not cruelty. They are dignity. And dignity is not something anyone gives you. It is something you claim. I sit in my condo now, the lake stretching wide and silver outside my windows. The city hums below, alive and endless. My life is mine. My space is mine. My choices are mine. The scars on my temple have faded, but I trace them sometimes gently like a map leading back to the moment everything changed. They remind me I survived more than a blow. I survived expectations designed to erase me. I survived tradition weaponized as control. I survived the lie that I existed to serve someone else's comfort. When I look in the mirror now, I see a woman who did not break. I see a woman who said no and meant it. I see a woman who walked through fire and found herself on the other side. If you are listening and you have ever felt like your worth depended on obedience or sacrifice or silence, hear me clearly. Your peace is not selfish. Your dreams are not arrogance. Your voice is not a threat. You are allowed to choose yourself even when others call it betrayal. You are allowed to say no even when they expect yes. You are allowed to build a life that belongs to you, not to the ones who try to claim ownership of your existence under the guise of love. If you have ever been told that family always comes first, no matter the cost, remember this real family does not demand your suffering. Real family does not punish your strength. Real family celebrates your freedom instead of fearing it. If you have ever fought to be seen, if you have ever been called ungrateful for wanting respect, if you have ever been blamed for the pain inflicted on you, you are not alone, and you are not wrong. Strength does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it shakes, sometimes it simply stands still and says enough. If any part of my story speaks to you, comment boundaries. Tell me where you are listening from. And if you are choosing yourself today or planning to soon, I am proud of you. Your life belongs to you. Your dignity is not negotiable. Your peace is not a gift from them. It is a right you claim for yourself. Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones no one else sees, not the dramatic moments that make headlines or gather whispers at weddings, but the quiet wars fought long before that. The moments when you swallow hurt because peace seems easier than truth. The nights you lie awake wondering if maybe, just maybe, you are the problem because they trained you to doubt your worth. If you are sitting here right now with a heartbeat that feels heavier than it should, if my story found you in a place where you have been holding too much for too long, breathe with me for a moment. Let the air come slow, not rushed. Let your shoulders fall away from your ears. You have carried enough. You do not have to be strong every minute to deserve peace. You do not have to be silent to earn love. You do not have to bleed emotionally so someone else can stay comfortable. Maybe you were told family always comes first. Maybe you were told loyalty means obedience. Maybe every time you tried to speak, someone rolled their eyes or sighed or said you were dramatic or ungrateful. And maybe you learned to rewrite your needs until they disappeared. I want you to know something softly but firmly. You deserve air. You deserve room. You deserve peace that does not demand your silence as payment. Healing is not loud. It is not a declaration or an explosion. Sometimes it is a whisper, a steady decision to stop apologizing for existing. Sometimes healing is a door quietly closing behind you, not slammed, just gently finally shut. I know how it feels to love people who hurt you, to crave approval that never comes to hold yourself to impossible expectations because someone convinced you that love must be earned. But love does not make you small. Control does. Love does not bruise your spirit. Ownership does. And you sitting here right now, breathing and surviving and learning to choose yourself, you are not selfish. You are waking up. You are breaking a cycle. You are writing a story where you finally get to be more than the quiet one, more than the giving one, more than the one who bends. And if choosing yourself cost you people who only valued you when you were silent, that is not a loss. That is freedom arriving disguised as grief. I want you to type one word if this spoke to you. Just one: boundaries. Because boundaries are not walls. They are doorways. They are declarations that you are human, not a possession. They are how we protect the quiet places inside us that still hope, still trust, still dream. Tell me where you are listening from. Tell me if you have ever had to choose peace over tradition, self-respect over expectation, freedom over fear. Not because pain needs to be performed, but because truth deserves to breathe. And if right now you are still in that space between knowing and acting, between breaking and rebuilding, you are not late. You are not weak. You are becoming. Healing takes time. Courage begins quietly. And peace, real peace, arrives softly like morning light, creeping across a room, gentle but unstoppable. Your life belongs to you. Your dignity is not negotiable. Your voice is not too loud. Your dreams are not too big. You are allowed to choose yourself. And I am proud of you for even considering it. Stay. Breathe. Speak when you are ready. You are not alone. Not anymore.